Okay, so what I've done here is I've imported one of my two-part cubes made in the Wings tutorial, if you want to look that one up, and it's just here to demonstrate how you can deal with the issues with grouping and the selection when it comes to using the influence control. Because there is a problem if you use groups with the influence control. Sometimes the grouping can break the selection list altogether. Sometimes you've got so many objects in, the list appears underneath the taskbar, which is down there, so you can't actually select the thing you want. So you need to do things in the right order to make it work. So we'll set up our sky and fog first of all. So in this drop down menu here, atmosphere off and set it fully white. Then go into the Skylab image based lighting tab, use HDRI image, use sky. Just check at the default setting, that gives us a fully white light probe. Turn the quality down to 16. In the intensity control, apply to light source. Specularity set at 0. HDRI effect, I'll increase that to 100 and turn off true ambience optimization. In the influence control here, include only the background. Notice the background is capitalized there. Then we'll do light from inside, turn cast shadows off, and the sun will have automatically been disabled as a result of using the use sky option and generating a HDR image. We'll use rendering scene there, and you can see there's no visible light arriving on the ground in the preview at the moment. So now we've set these things up because everything's included on the background and the ground's not being lit. Otherwise we'd have quite a lot out of this because of the link between the apply to light source acts as a multiplier between the intensity and the HDRI effect. Right, in our render options then, render options, we go premium effects, 64 rays per pixel will do, true ambience, scatter correction, boost light, and turn maximum ray depth down to 4. So that's set things up. At the moment then, if I set this to fully black now, that's the atmosphere off setting, then the sky won't be lit, there'll be no light in this scene. To get the parts of this to glow that we want to glow, we need to change the name of the bits in the object. So if I select in here and select inner 5 and alter the attributes of this to background, it's got to exactly match the name given, then we get the glowing effect which we're looking for. So what I want to do now is produce quite a few of these cubes. So I'll select the entire group and I'll use random replicate, and I'll produce 20 of them, let's say. So that'll produce a few of those. Might take a moment, there's a little progress announcement in this corner going on. Right, so I've got those. I'm going to lift them all up. I'm going to select this one as well, that's it, and lift that up. Then I'm going to enlarge them so we've got something to look at and drop them down. Right, so we've got a cluster of these objects now. Maybe I'll lift the camera up and point it down a bit at these so we can get a better view. Right, because we're using premium effects, it might slow the render down a bit. So as you can see, I've just hit the render there, I've still only got one portion of this glowing, and that is because using the replication function, these have all got additional numbers put on the end, which is a little bit inconvenient. So what I need to do, if I control Z, will I get back to where I was? Right, back to where I was. When this is in its default grey setup, and I need the bit that's going to glow, if I change the family of that to in this case orange, so that allows me to select that in a bit and then select the whole group again, edit, I'll do the random replicate, no, so remember my settings, so there we go, that's going to just go through that little procedure there. Right, I'll lift these up, oh don't forget to grab that one, so group 1, lift those up and then enlarge and drop that down. So once again I've created my cluster of cubes there. So that's if I got rid of that one there, I'd be able to fit these in comfortably. See, I could change the aspect ratio to make the rendering more efficient, so I'll just make it square for ease and narrow the field of view. So right, so once again I've only got my original one glowing, but if I use the family selection I can modify the name of all of them together and I've got to get it exactly right, no spelling mistakes allowed, background with capital B, then when I check out of there, nothing glows. I need to select all the objects that are grouped. So just select all those objects and ungroup them. And it's still not working. Where have I slipped up here? That's called background. Attributes. Have I spelt it wrong? Oh yes, look. This is what happens when you're dyslexic. G-R-O-U-N-D. Alright. It would probably have worked when they were grouped then if I'd have managed to spell it right. Alright, let's see. I'll edit it now when they're grouped, and O-U-N-D. I suppose I'll have to leave that in as a demonstration of how things can go wrong. So that has got my entire group blown. Bearing in mind we're only dealing with the default grey material, so the render time is going to be fairly efficient. If I want more light output from this, I can increase it through the HDRI effect or the intensity control, which is acting as a multiplier. So I can increase the amount of light coming out, and it's starting to light up the other parts of the outsides of the cube. Then I'll take that up a little bit further, make it 400, and likewise, as demonstrated in the other little tutorial, if I select the family group orange, I think that's what we've got at the moment, and modify the material and make this, well, let's do a, I don't know, let's try a bluey green colour. So if I select a bluey green colour, now I need to, if I want it to appear white, it needs to have some red component in. What happens is when the intensity of the effect is so strong, all of these get multiplied up. So if there's any value, even if it was 1, under enough light, the hue would shift. See the hue shift tutorial for a further example of this, and it'll show as white. If you miss any of the channels out, then it'll settle at the primary colour. So if you miss out the red channel, you'll just get cyan. See, not enough light at the moment, so that hasn't boosted the red value. If I wanted to find out what the red value was, I could pick out that and pull up the RGB with the Alt control, and that's taken the red value up to 14. If we go into the material, you can see I set it at 1. So you can see 14. How many in 255? How many 14s? 255 divided by 14. 18. So if I was to set this at 19, for example, in all probability, even though this colour doesn't look very different, when it gets rendered it'll probably look white. So there you go. That's the way you can fiddle the control there. I suppose, let's say render time 4 minutes 13. Let's see what it's offering us for the maximum raise per pixel that we can use. I suppose at this point we could add depth of field if we want, because we're already using premium effect. It probably wouldn't increase the render time significantly, and all the premium effects are also options. So it's going to take 20 minutes to render out at the highest raise per pixel. As you can see, areas that are not lit by the inner glowing are coming out completely fully black, and if you don't feel that's an appropriate choice, then you might consider providing a gel light on the outside of this to provide a little bit of ambient light, or you could just use the sky colour, because that will also apply ambient light from the outside, because it's not been cut off by the gel acting as a true ambience firewall, as it is in other examples of doing this effect. So many choices there. That is probably a little bit too much ambient, and you could have it as a different colour. That would work too. So that's an option. I don't know if that really goes with the scene, but let's try blue. So do a bluish cast to all this. So there you go. I suppose really that's the end of the tutorial. It's taken about 10 minutes, which is not too bad considering I made a bit of a mistake in the middle, and I'll just let this render out and let you see the results when it's done. So, well, that is frankly a moderately hideous result. I mean, it worked, but it's not very nice to look at. Let's see if we can do better than that. Okay, let's turn the atmosphere colour down to black. We'll turn ambience down, it's not really going to take effect. And go into the image based lighting tab, and we'll use one of Horrow's, and we'll use this Specular convolved one since we're talking about the use of that on the forum. So that's changed the lighting setup, and you need to disable True Ambience optimization again because it re-enables it when you load a light probe, and re-enable apply to light source. Everything else should be used the same. Let's use sky as backdrop and add to sky. So let's see where that puts us now. In a rather slow rendering situation. Let's go render options and lower the raise per pixel. That'll speed up our previewing process. So that's changed things a bit, and now because you're using a HDRI, and this changes the distribution of lighting, so you have a different lighting effect. At the moment there's very little light being put out by this, but that might be a good thing. We'll see. So I'm going to change all the materials then. So if I select default material, so that's excluded the ground, but it's all the cubes, and then go into the material lab, I'm going to use an appropriate material to go with this backdrop, so that'll be one of the Treppenhall metals. Should I try something a bit shiny, or should I try something quite dull? Well, if I have a shiny one, where are you hiding? Then that'll include the background as well. Let's see, there's this pearlescent one, that's the iridescent one. That needs Specular to work. It's got some reflection. Oh, okay, let's try that because we've got some green light in this scene. And now I'm going to increase the intensity of the backdrop because that's added to the sky, so that'll pick up the reflection. So I'll make that, if it was 5 and I make it 50, that'll be very bright, won't it? If I make it 25, divide by 5, so what's that? 80. That should bring us back to the same light level, but now we'll have more reflection on the outside. And you can also see now with the lack of the TA firewall, we're getting some transience effect in directly from the outside because the image being used as a backdrop. So let's have a look at these fellows now. Okay, so we've got some glow. If I wanted to increase that glow effect, bear in mind when I modified all the materials of those cubes, the family here, if I go into the material lab, will have been changed to that, but I can just change it to the default colour and make that a sort of green. See how that looks. That should brighten it slightly. I don't want it to overwhelm it because I still want some change in the distribution of the lighting on that, so it'll make it seem more glowy. That'll be a slightly nicer effect than we had before. What else could we do? Right, premium effects in the material lab. I'm going to choose the material that I made for the anisotropic reflection lake scene, so that's that one, anisotropic water. And then in my render options I can increase the options with the blurry reflections, so now I've got two premium effects working. Let's have a look how that looks. Perhaps the reflection's a bit high and a bit low down there, but don't know, it looks convincingly glowy. I don't know whether I want any diffuse in that. I might switch the reflection down and provide some diffuse grey, see how that looks. So pick up some of the glow effect on the ground. Not convinced by this. Let me think. Okay, right, I'm going to modify that material again. Oh, it's not got any diffusion yet, so if I increase the diffusion and lower the reflection a bit, I suppose they should add up to about 100 while you're not using a channel here. When you add a channel here, then the two interact and you get some modifications in diffusion depending how the material settings are set as far as alpha scaling is concerned. If you look there in the options, I'll just show you where that is rather than just mention it in passing. Right, if you add a blob here, doesn't matter what alpha scaling, if you change that, that affects the amount of diffusion that's transferred to the reflective areas. So I just thought I'd mention that because it can create some peculiar effects or problems. So obviously with this level of noise we're going to need a fairly high raise per pixel anyway. I don't know whether these look convincingly glowing, but one thing that is missing is with no specular. Now if we've got apply to light source here, we might be able to get some specular light out of this, but it's only going to transfer onto what's included, so it's not going to help us in this situation, and adding so much additional calculations might not be a good idea. So instead use the sun, re-enable the sun, and then you can change the sun position, and you should be able to see in this little preview there's a bit of an effect going on already with the on the edges of the cubes there, so that's created a bit of a lighting effect on the outside that adds to the complexity of the image. I don't know whether it's a particularly nice image at the moment, but I've really gone on for another 5 minutes, and this is going to be a 10-minute tutorial, and now it's turned into a 15-minute one. Oh well. Right, so I still think that looks hideous, but I should stop at some point, so I'll turn the raise per pixel up to 256, and we'll see how long it thinks it's going to take to render. Bear in mind the last one, what was that offering as a render time of? I can't remember now, I'll have to check the video. But this, I would think, is going to take considerably longer because of the presence of the reflections. We're not just on diffuse materials now, so that's going to increase the amount of probes from the light gathering process, from the transients and the reflections. Instead of just arriving at the diffuse colour and determining what it is, it's going to have to take into account that there'll be a bounce when there's a reflection, and then it'll look further into the scene. So you'll have bounces that are occurring between the different objects in the scene, as well as having another light source in the sun with the specularity. So yeah, that render time's jumped right up now to 3 hours. So I'll pause the video again, and we'll see what we've got at the end of this. Here then is the final render. It's still not entirely pretty, but at least I suppose it demonstrates a variety of different lighting approaches using this method, and you can see at it's combined effect. You've got a nice anisotropic reflection here that obviously the blurring effect here becomes more pronounced as it gets further away from the source of the reflection there. We've got specularity shown through here of these rather gaudy rainbow colours, and a reflection that's interacting with the HDRI backdrop, which in turn is providing some light through its image, but the majority of light through the light from inside, and then the named material properties. As you can see, each of these that is apparently, well, is actually glowing, but also is apparently glowing because of the way the material's lit through the fact that it's been named background, which is the key point, and make sure you spell it right. Okay then, that's the end of the tutorial.